Welcome, Sallie.
There we go.
Hi.
Great. Hi.
I have to say, it is just truly such an honor to have this opportunity to interview you, Sallie. So thank you so much for being with us here today and for being part of this launch.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. I'm thrilled to be here.
It's just really wonderful. And obviously you are a woman who really needs no introduction, but I will do my best just to touch upon some of the many, many highlights. As I'm sure everyone on this call knows, Sallie is the CEO and the co-founder of Ellevest, which is an innovative financial company by women for women. And just a little bit about Ellevest, it is actually the fastest growing digital investment platform. Very cool, or one of the fastest growing digital investment platforms. It's been named number 24 in CNBC's top 50 disruptor list, I think number 14 on LinkedIn's 50 most sought after startups, and one of Entrepreneur Magazine's top 100 brilliant ideas of all time, which is amazing. Sallie, you are also the co-chair of Elevate Network, which is 135,000 strong global professional women's network. And as if you weren't busy enough, you were also the best-selling author of Own It, The Power of Women at Work, which is a totally awesome book. So, Sallie, you have made it your mission, and this is in your own words, to get more money into the hands of women, thus enabling them to live better lives and unleashing a positive ripple effect for our families, our communities, and our economy. And I love this for so many reasons. One is that it just mirrors so closely so many of the points that have been touched upon throughout today and all of the different panels. So I just want to kind of stick to the framework that we've been revisiting like throughout discussions. And I want to start with first identifying the entrenched systemic challenges and inequities when it comes to women, money, and power. Because I am sure you've thought about this a lot.
Well, how long do we have? Because it will take all day into next week, into weeks after, and it surrounds us. It's like we're fish in water. We don't know that we're in water. The issues around money are every single place we look, and the challenge is that knowing about the gender pay gap. I want to introduce the concept of the gender wealth gap. Pay gaps, 82 cents to a white man's dollar. Wealth gap, 32 cents to a white man's dollar. A penny for Black women, a penny for brown women. Moving in the wrong direction before the pandemic, moving even more in the wrong direction during the pandemic. And what are our solutions for them? As a culture, it's buy this book. You go, girl. You've got this. Earn more. Ask for the raise this way. Start your business, you plucky little thing. You go. Not recognizing that we are replacing. We've got this self-help mentality to try to replace systemic inequities and systemic biases and systemic, issues that keep us down. I'll point to one, which is in the home. I can point to plenty, right? The fact that we are the richest country the world has ever known and don't have mandated paid maternity leave, affordable childcare, that we spend so much more money on people who are within years of death than on our children. How does that make any sense, right? I could go on and on with this. And that we allow, the gender pay gaps, to remain and sort of unchallenged in a way. But what I want to talk about is something over which we have a modicum of control, which is our society and our culture. And in our culture today, in our homes today, we talk to boys and girls and men and women very differently around money. And those things lead to men, when you bring up the topic of money, it is a positive. It's making money. It's power, strength, independence. And for women, it is scarcity. It's loneliness, it's isolation, it's uncertainty. And that's because in the home today, we tell our little boys to get rich, go to the top of the jungle gym, you're good at math. We tell our little girls, be careful, coupon clip, don't get your dress dirty, you're good at English. He watches daddy invest. In only 2% of US households today does the mom take the lead in investing. So she watches mom coupon clip. At school, he gets better grades in math for the same answers as his sister, for the same answers. When they grow up, think about it. Male money media everywhere, CNBC, Bloomberg, Fox Business, Cranes, Barron's, all about making money and growing money. No female money media. But when there are articles in female media, it's about guilt and how hard it is. And, you know, it's in patronizing. Money doesn't have to be really, really hard financial planning. Take this money quiz. Are you a Carrie or a Miranda? Don't buy the latte, invest the money. Don't get the manicure. I mean, you never see on CNBC Jim Cramer say to Mike Santoli, give up the latte, buddy. You know, that's your money problem, right? And so it's a scarcity. And so we think we're not good at money. We're not good at math, even though we are. We think we're not good investors, even though we're better investors than men. And so we get this sense to where today there's no amount of money a woman makes that she's not ashamed of. It's too much. My friends, I feel so bad. They're working harder than I am, but I'm making more. It's too little. My parents, they sent me to school. So we don't talk about money. We prefer to talk about our own death and certainly sex instead of money. And so I love to say, and I'll shut up in a second, if the guys had gotten together 200 years ago and said, how do we keep women down? I've got it. Make them think they're bad at money. That's it. Here's better. Make them think it's cute to be bad with money. Do things like, I'm bad, got the bad with money little thing. I'm so cute. I'm so adorable. You know, no, just me. I'm just bad with money. Make it feminine and cute. Make being good with money like what being athletic was 20 years ago, where it's sort of butchy and, you know, not so great, you know, from a man's perspective. Right. And so as a result, we don't go to Wall Street. We don't go to venture capital. So women, we built financial institutions that don't serve women, and venture capital, we don't give women loans. That's what I think about that.
Thank you. That was word, like everything you said and then more. And, you know, everything you said, and then also the equity gap and the power gap, which was wrapped up in what you said. And I want to hear you talk even more on both those points, because, you know, certainly thinking about these entrenched systemic challenges, right? Both of those are just baked into the system. Like when we're talking about power and leadership, you know, we don't have enough women on boards. We don't have enough diverse voices at the C-suite level. When we talk about the equity gap, and that, you know, and that obviously cuts super, super close to the core of the fourth floor, which is this focus on, you know, this incredible, vast, silent sea of, you know, of private companies, smaller private companies, kind of under the radar, all of that wealth. You know, there's a giant gap. And I think you touched on that a little bit with your, was it 32 cents you said?
32 cents to a white man's dollar. And what's in between the pay gap and the wealth gap is we spend less time in the workforce for sure, because of that no mandated paid parental leave. But we don't invest as much as men do. We keep more of our money in cash because we've been socialized to do so. We, you know, the debt that we hold has higher interest rates, even when we have the same FICO scores. We have more student loan debt outstanding because and that sort of comes from the pay gap because we're not able to pay it off as quickly. And so Ellevest was really founded to work through here, because to get back to your point, you can say, how does money relate to power? How does money relate to equity? Money is power. Money is power. In a capitalist society, money's power. And we see this everywhere, right? We see that it has, you know, that if we don't have as much money as the guys do, if we don't have enough money, it keeps us from leaving the job we hate, right? I'm living paycheck to paycheck. I can't leave this job. It keeps us in the relationship that no longer works for us, because when women today leave a relationship, get a divorce, their standard of living goes down a double-digit percent and the man's goes up a double-digit percent. You know, it's what keeps us from founding our company. It's what keeps us in a way from even negotiating for more equity or more money. When you're in a position of, I can't afford to lose this, you can't play loose. And so it's everything. It is also women's number one source of stress, no surprise. And so this lack of equality, this lack of money equality eats away at our well-being. And so it's interesting to me. And again, you get sort of, sort of brainwashed by sort of women's magazines and all that stuff. But so interesting to me that it's all about emotional wellness, physical wellness, spiritual wellness, but very little about financial wellness. And if you don't have the financial wellness, you don't have that foundation. It's almost the hierarchy of needs, where if this enormous source of stress eats away at you, then how can you achieve the next levels? The good news is that if you take action on this, and I'm not talking about go to get the raise from the boss, because that takes two to tango. That takes a long time. That if we live in a biased society, chances are our boss is biased too. And so that's not as easy as the 10-step process to get the raise, because we live in a systemically biased society. But what I am talking about are taking those actions, like investing a bit out of every paycheck, like increasing your savings by X amount, right? Like impact investing, things where you're looking to say, I've got a few small wins. And those small wins then add up to bigger and bigger wins, and that releases the source of stress.
Well, so yeah, no, I love that. And I think that's great advice. And it just makes such sense, the fact that absence just can create this kind of destabilization that has this ripple effect, that impacts so much. So let's talk about innovative solutions and approaches, because you're touching upon that. Certainly, I know that is what Ellevest is, right? Like kind of cutting to the chase. So maybe if you give us some perspective on what you've seen, like in terms of, clearly at Ellevest, but also, bigger picture, maybe, nationally, globally, like what trends are you seeing where maybe it's leveraging technology, maybe it's leveraging community, but looking.
Oh, for sure. Look, so since we're talking money, women direct 85% of consumer spending. Women control $7 trillion of investable assets. Now, we don't have as much as the guys do, but that's a lot of money. If we decided tomorrow, you always talk about empowering women. We don't need to be empowered. If we decided tomorrow that we were no longer going to buy from or invest in companies that had not supported us, but instead we were to buy from or invest in companies that align with our values, we would change the world immediately. Now it's a little hard to do. And, Amazon is so convenient, in my bank, I've been in my bank for forever and I'll get to it. But if we decide 85% of consumer spending, right, we could change it like that. Okay. So let me back up. Ellevest. So I founded Ellevest. A number of people told me to found it after I left running Merrill Lynch and Smith Barney. And I got to tell you truthfully, I was like, that is such a stupid idea. Women don't need their own thing for money. Money's gender neutral. Everybody knows women are risk averse. It's not, it's their fault they're not investing because they're so risk averse. And if I'm going to be frank, again, I grew up in the same society as all of you did. The idea of doing something for women felt junior varsity. And I was sort of like, I'm in the varsity, right? So for women, ew, look at us drinking our Chardonnay and investing. But then it hit me how severely this wealth gap is impacting us, is impacting our daughters, our sons, the economy, society. This wealth disparity, whether it's a gender wealth disparity or racial wealth disparity, right, is just really harming us, And so I said, you know what? I know a lot about investing. And we also do now debt pay down and coaching and all this stuff, but we started as an investing firm. I know a lot about investing. I know some amount about women. I happen to be one of them. Everybody tells me, it's costing women, the women on this call, hundreds of thousands, for some of you, millions of dollars over the course of your life because you're not investing as large a percent as the men are. Well, everybody knows it's because women are risk averse. And then I thought, well, wait a second, maybe it's not that women are risk averse. They're not investing. Maybe it's in an industry where 99% of investment dollars are managed at companies owned by white men, and 98% of mutual fund managers are men, even though women, remember, are better at this. 86% of financial advisors are men, 90% of traders are men. Maybe they built a business for themselves that they like. Maybe Bitcoin, Jim Cramer, ring the gong, buy low, sell high, trade, frenzy, brag about it at cocktail parties. Maybe, CNBC is ESPN for money, and the industry symbol is a literal actual bull, like a literal actual bull. I don't know what's more phallic. I mean, I guess if they had a snake, that would be the other more phallic thing, but they're like, essentially stay away. And so I thought, what if I go raise some money from, by the way, mission-aligned investors, the Melinda Gates, the Penny Pritzkers, et cetera. And we actually just set about using technology to build the first investing and money platform for women. And it'll be things, it's not going to be things like it's going to be pink. It'll be things like our retirement offering is the only one that I'm aware of that takes into account your gender. Why does that matter? Money's gender neutral. I tell you why it matters, because women earn less, unfortunately. Our salaries peak sooner. We take more time out of the workforce, and we die later. So if you're a dude and the investing algorithm thinks you're average, you die with money. If you're a woman and the investing algorithm thinks you're average, you can die penniless. This is a big deal, right? And so we found other things. We found women were more motivated to invest for impact. Women are more motivated to invest for their goals, like buying a home or starting a business, rather than just making more money, though that's cool too. And we did thousands of hours of research with women to really get to the core of what they were looking for. Mm-hmm. And it's been hard. I mean, it's been really hard. You would have thought I've been around on Wall Street for forever. I happen to know everybody. You'd think raising venture money would have been easy. It was terrible. And in fact, I later read women CEOs raise 1% of fintech venture dollars. And so it's 99 no's for every one yes, which makes for a long afternoon.
Indeed. Yeah. Indeed, it does. Yeah, amazing. Okay, so, one thing that's interesting in what you just said, so another bit of your background, like you mentioned this, you were the CEO at, so many major, large, giant banks. And, obviously these are huge multinational corporations. They have incredible influence when it comes to money and power just globally. And then now what you're doing with Ellevest, it's to the outsider, it seems as if you may have discovered all the secrets and you've seen some blind spots, like some really significant blind spots. And Ellevest, and I know you said it was really hard, it maybe took a second before it really registered, like, really seeing those blind spots and figuring out how to leverage that, disrupt it. But it feels like you're doing that with Ellevest. So I guess one question I have is, so do you think they're catching on? Like, do you think these big corporate, like the Ellevest of the future, it's just ripe, like we can just disrupt it because they haven't figured this out?
Look, I hope so. I really hope more people get it. But here's the challenge. And people say to me, why, Sallie, why didn't you do this when you were running Merrill? And the answer is because I'm not stupid. We were making $2 billion a year of income. We were making plenty of personal money, right? So we were well paid. And, I had a workforce that was 90% male that was very traditional. And so for me to come in and be like, we're going to launch an Ellevest right here at Merrill. And by the way, what they say about startups, right? Your profit margin is my opportunity. So we take that profit margin and we give it to the client. So if we're right, we're going to completely change the business. We're going to go totally tech, and we're going to make much less money. Who's ready? And no, right? And so it's the innovator's dilemma. The traditional entrenched banks with their large successful businesses, which, by the way, nobody's ringing a bell and saying there's an emergency. And so what they do is they'll put together a woman's initiative, right? Here's a woman's initiative. Here's another one. Mm-hmm. We love to say at Ellevest, it's not just an initiative for us. It's our whole mission. Mm-hmm. So over there, they're going to sort of dabble around. And they always, I think, amongst us gals, have always been trying to solve the wrong problem. Because they've always tried to solve the problem is, how do we change how women behave? How do we do it through a marketing plan? Making the simplifying assumption our products are fine, right? We're not going to change the product. We're not going to change the bank account or the, the investment account. In fact, when you interview women and say, what's the number one thing you want from a financial company? A lot of them say, I want help getting a raise. I'd like executive coaching. The banks listen to this like, yeah, but it's not what we do. Ellevest does it. We started doing it because that's what we heard. So I think that's tough. But I'm going to be honest with you. I think the other tough part about it over here, okay, let's get a startup. Well, to form an Ellevest, you've got to have, I think, really decades of experience in investing in financial services. You want, particularly for investing, you don't want someone who's like, I just figured this out 6 weeks ago, right? You need to build an outstanding tech team. Neither of these things are cheap. You've got to be able to raise a significant amount of capital because there's a capital intensity to it. You probably have to be a woman. You probably look at that result that says women raise 1% of fintech venture capital dollars, and you say, I don't know how I can even do this. And so I think it's hard for startups. There were two that tried to start when we started, and they just weren't well financed enough or sort of framed the problem correctly, which is why I have such a weight on my shoulders, because I feel such responsibility to get this right for the women on this, but for your daughters, your nieces, your sons as well, because the good we can do is so great. And the group of people who are willing and able to do it is so small.
Well, yeah, great point. And also that really is a perfect segue into, the next thing I really would love to hear you speak about, which is, the exponential value that we can indeed unlock if we can start to crack the code on them. If the Ellevest of the future, Ellevest is very successful, other innovations are successful, what's the upside?
Yeah. So there are a couple of ways to answer this question. There's a literal way and there's sort of a strategic way, right? Look, the upside of cracking this code is a fairer, kinder society. The guys have been at this for a while. They've been leaders for a while. I don't know if we need to look any further back than 2020, in which, we fought this pandemic, and we can see how the women leaders of this world reacted, and we can see how the men leaders of the world reacted. We can see the anger, this toxic anger that led to the breaching of the Capitol. I'll never forget. I mean, none of us are ever going to forget that day. So I think there's an answer here, which is greater fairness, greater gender fairness, almost by definition, moderates this toxicity, right? The power of diversity is so well understood and known, so many research places. And to me, it's just like the most obvious thing, right? Let's just get more women. And I don't know, I probably all of you too. I mean, I wept on Inauguration Day because the women ruled that inauguration. Love Joe Biden. The women ruled that friggin' inauguration. That coat game was something to behold. So that's one answer. Another answer for this group, and I love the way you said exponential, because us engaging with our money and then using that money to buy from, invest in, give to, and change the world. That step of investing. One of the things we as women, I think that we just aren't able to correctly assess. Somehow our brains just can't wrap around it, are two things. One of which is when we say the stock market, women, for whatever, it's risky, it does this, okay? That's one thing. Well, actually, what the stock market has done historically is this. So there's volatility, but it has been upward trending. In fact, so upward trending that since the 1920s, the stock market, the S&P 500, has gone up 9.5% a year annually. Not every year, but on average. So the other thing we find it hard to get our brains around is the power of compounding. You said exponential, okay? Where you invest something, it earns a return, and then you earn a return on the return on it, and then a return on the return, and then Warren Buffett calls it a snowball. Albert Einstein called it the eighth wonder of the world. And let me give you a feel for what we've been missing out on. Okay, this is hypothetical. It would never happen because we don't own a time machine, but if we did own a time machine and you and I got back into it and we invested in 1900, $1,000, which was a fair amount of money in 1900, and left it, didn't put another penny in, but just let it compound till 2020. Okay. There are a lot of bad things that happened, for sure, that you think that'll make the stock market go down, you know, like the pandemic of 1917 and the Great Depression and the Great Market Crash and World War I and World War II and the Korean War and the Vietnam War and the subprime market crisis and the internet bubble burst and the crash of 87 and terrorism on US soil and stagflation, inflation. I mean, you know, throw them out like, woo, that was a really tough 120 years. There was a lot of, you know, gas prices, but that was a tough 120 years. Do you know what that $1,000, if you had left it in the market, would be worth in 2020?
I'm embarrassed to hazard a guess.
$58 million.
Oh my God.
$58 million. And that is what the Warren Buffetts of the world have realized. If you can invest, forget about trading. It's a loser's game. And just let it grow. A little bit out of every paycheck. If you can get your nieces and your daughters to do this early, that's when you can start to say, I'm leaving my friggin' job, right? I don't need this relationship. I'm running for office. I'm starting the business that I don't need the venture capitalist money from that's going to change the world. Taking part in the good part of capitalism in order to change capitalism is what we're trying to help people do.
I love that. And I think, you know, you spoke about this earlier, the challenge, you know, there is such a challenge there when it comes to the mind frame of people, right? So certainly, yes, it's a biased world. Yes, you know, the system is a product of that world. But, you know, also for us, for women, you know, we are stuck in that system, you know, that is mirroring. And so how, you know, let's talk a little bit more about the reframe and the power of that and how you're, you know, finding success through Ellevest and in other ways, helping women, but also men, but kind of, you know, do this reframe, right? Where they're seeing it the way you're describing it.
Well, look, what I would start, I'd probably use as an analogy, you know, athleticism, you know, competitive sports that, you know, it was a long time ago. I was in middle school. It doesn't feel that long ago. When I do remember the choice was cheerleading or volleyball. And you knew which one I was going for, cheerleading, right? That being sporty at the time was not feminine, not cute. You weren't going to get asked to the middle school dance, the homecoming dance, or the prom if you were, you know, a certain kind of girl playing sports. And then over time, here come Venus Williams, who actually is an investor in Ellevest, Serena Williams, you know, more recently, the US soccer team, you know, some of the gymnasts that we watched in the Olympics over time, that slowly our culture moved. You know, we worked to become healthier starting in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, you know, where then fitness and athleticism are desirable qualities of a well-lived life. And I've talked to actually all these women about this. And I sort of think of the path of money as being the same thing, that it's a, you know, sort of, it's unattractive to be good with money. It means you're masculine, you're not cute, or you're not going to get a date, you know, if you have too much money. In fact, just a few years ago, would you believe it, that when in a relationship with a man and a woman, if the woman made more money than the man, they would both lie about it. He would say he made more and she would say she made less, right? And so running right at this and saying it doesn't, you know, these gender roles hurt men as much, if not more, than they hurt women. You know, that the responsibility they have for this is killing them, in some cases, literally killing them. P.S. One thing I should say is aside, if a woman outsources her money to the man in her life, when it comes back to her, which it does, because 80% of women die single, whether we want to or not, when it comes back to us, 74% of us have a negative surprise. And what I think is happening there is we're doing that. It's his job, and I'm dealing with the birthday parties and trying to climb the corporate ladder. And he's over here saying, shoot, you know, part of my masculine identity is being good with money. and trading Bitcoin the right way and having the right hedge fund manager. And so she's like, when it comes back to her in, by the way, what is typically one of the worst days of her life, it's not as much as she was led to believe that it is. And so I think if we think about it, I digress, but I think we think about it like athleticism, where this is part of a well-rounded, well-lived life, recognizing it's that source of stress, and that we as leaders normalize this in our homes. That we as leaders, in our homes, and moms in our home, that our sons and daughters see us investing. Our sons and daughters see our, hopefully your Ellevest account, but if it's someone else, I'll forgive you eventually. But that we see us living those values, good with money, and supporting those companies and institutions that align with our values.
Right. I love that. So, and it starts at home, and, this sort of just reframe hopefully can extend outwards, and, hopefully eventually get to boards and get to C-suites. And, we start to have that resounding effect that, you talk about in your mission statement. I'm sure I speak for everyone on this call listening, just so many moments throughout, so many just poignant examples that you've made. I mean, I've experienced them in my life. I mean, so like literally it's like tick, 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 tick. Yep. All of that is true. So, and I'm sure we're all feeling that way. So it's just so satisfying. It's so satisfying to, to hear it this way and to hear it laid out this way. And it's also really exciting because, of the opportunity that presents for all of us. So I know we are down to our last few minutes, and because it's just so precious and so wonderful to have your rapt attention, I would love to ask you some very specific, tangible, for some very specific, tangible tips for people listening, because we do have, for instance, we have many women entrepreneurs on this call. We have many women executives of all stripes. We have investors. So, they all have questions for you. And one, just, best sort of tangible tip takeaway for women entrepreneurs listening to you right now.
Oh, let's all have a glass of wine. This entrepreneur thing is so hard, isn't it? My gosh, like people said it was hard before I did it. I'm like, but you didn't say it was hard. Like when you said it was hard, you didn't say it was hard. It just let me, from the bottom of my heart, thank you all for what you're doing, building these businesses against all odds with the stress in a pandemic, just, I don't want to use the word unprecedented. What I am struggling a little bit is with finding I don't like the word work-life balance, but some kind of equilibrium. I've been sometimes drinking too much alone at night to try to relieve the stress. I'm trying to exercise more. But I think for all of us, thank you, because entrepreneurs are the future of this country. And finding, that way to get some kind of equilibrium in our lives so that we can fight the next day. And then, I try to remember this isn't me, this is my situation. Mm-hmm. And just remember who I am. And this is fun. Every day above ground is a good day. This is fun.
Great point. Okay, and now same thing, but for the executives listening who, who struggle all the time trying to climb the ladder in this world that we're in.
Yeah. Look, executives, sometimes it's just not your fault. It's just not your fault. So I could go on and on about this. I used to go to the Fortune Most Powerful Women's conferences. And Sallie, how did you do it? And I'm like, oh, here's my 3-point, list of how I got into the C-suite at the big banks. In fact, I recently saw a woman who's sort of is going into a senior role. Well, if I could go part-time for X period of time and become this, then you can too. And I've come to the recognition like, no, that just because some of us made it doesn't mean you can too. That we've grown up in this environment with this embedded sexism. Mm-hmm. And we've been told, I might argue sold a bill of goods that is within our power to individually overcome it if we just do X, Y, and Z. And I would say to some of you, sometimes it's not you, it's him. It's him that you're working hard, you're putting out A+ material, and then he promotes Steve, and then he promotes John, and then he promotes Bill, and then he promotes Stuart. And we have been socialized as women, again, because we bought the book, that, you know, we just have to do something just somewhat different. It's just something with us. And I remember doing this with Brian Moynihan at Bank of America. Well, can I give you the information this way? Can I give you the information? You know, like, how can I do it? At one point, I looked up and I was like, he doesn't like me. He didn't like me. He just didn't like me. You know, I think I look like, no repeating this, team. You know, I think I look like someone who turned him down for prom. I really do. You know, like, he's looking at me, he just didn't like me. And so when you live in a sexist society, sometimes it's just not your fault. And I think we have to be more open about that. And that's not good news, but it means if you recognize it, you can get away from it, right? Or you can, you know, relax a little bit and not play so tense. You can think about starting your own business. But I don't think we acknowledge nearly enough that just because she did it doesn't mean you can too, in a sexist, racist society. That was luck, hard work, but some degree of luck that you might not have with your boss.
Thank you, Sallie. Really, just that was fantastic. And I mean, I could go on and on. Unfortunately, our time with you is over. This was just so wonderful.
Thank you. Oh, I had so much fun. You could tell I've been locked in this apartment with my husband for too long, clearly. But come on over and visit us at Ellevest. I'd love for y'all to come over and look at what we're doing. We have memberships for people who are newer to investing. We have a private wealth offering for those who are, you know, have more complex needs. But come on over and just support and read and see what we're doing, because we're really working on this to help all of us move further forward.
Right. Absolutely. 100%.
Great.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Take care.
Thank you.